All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Shonda J, your BCBA. You guys got to bear with me. This is my first time going live, so I'm doing the best I can. So, with that being said, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. This is my first time going live, so bear with me. So, with that being said, hello, everyone, and welcome to Shonda J Presents. I'm your host, Shonda J, your BCBA, and I'm truly grateful you're here. This is our first live YouTube event, so thank you for extending a lot of grace as we launch this new space together. My hope is that we will be the first of many conversations where we will learn, grow, and navigate meaningful topics as a community, especially those related to adult services, ableism, mental health, and ABA. The purpose of this platform is not just to talk about change, but to explore how we can work together to create supportive learning environments that allow people to thrive. While we often discuss dismantling ableism, we also recognize the importance of interdependence. Understanding that everyone has different strengths, needs, and level of support, and that collaboration is what helps individuals succeed with dignity. At the core of this work is a simple mission: helping people succeed by working together to identify practical, respectful ways to build environments where growth, autonomy, and support can coexist. This work is also reflected in my role as the founder of T Mental Health Alliance, where we focus on bridging behavioral science, mental health, and community collaboration to better support adults and those who walk alongside them. Tonight, I'm so excited to do something a little different. You'll notice I'm joined by several amazing professionals who are helping make this discussion meaningful and collaborative. First, I'd like to introduce my ABA clinical mentee, Mackenzie. Hey, Mackenzie.
Hi.
She is joining me as a part of our professional growth and contribution to this work. And we're also honored to welcome our featured guest, Nicholas, a sexual behavior analyst and LGBTQIA family system specialist. Nicholas has been a BCBA since 2013, beginning their work at Easter Seals Midwest in 2012. They are the owner of Empowered, founded in 2015, and became a AASECT certified sexuality counselor in 2021. Nicholas currently serves as the bylaws chair, now in their second term, and as a professional mentor for AASECT, the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. With over 19 years of experience in sexuality education and counseling, Nicholas has trained with organizations. They have helped bring sexual behavior analysis to a global audience, first through Empowered Certified Behavior Sexologist credential, and now through the IBAOSXL micro credentialing, launching internationally in 2026. So, yes, all right, and yes. So, with that being said, Nicholas' mission has been to correct historical harm and expand equitable, ethical sexuality services to all populations worldwide. We're also joined by additional members of the Empowered team who support this work in many ways. I love to invite you both to introduce yourselves and share how you contribute to Nick's mission.
Hi, I can go first. So my name is Brittany Medrano. I am a board certified behavior analyst and I'm a certified behavior sexologist, graduated from Nicholas's amazing team. I have provided ABA services in Southern California, expanding consultations to many regions for the last 15 years. I also support specialized wraparound programs, and I've been doing that for the last 5 years. And just most recently, I started doing course content for Empowered. I just presented on increasing insights in cultural Hispanic communities, and I'm working on a second program on how to start talking about sexual behaviors within those Hispanic communities.
All right. Yes.
And hi, everyone. My name is Shalini Solomon. I'm also a board certified behavior analyst. So I've been in the field for about 11 years now, and I currently work in Hawaii, where I work in school-based systems. So my clinical background started in the clinics, in homes, and right now I'm working a lot in the school setting. And I'm also working with Nicholas's program for the certified behavioral sexology. So I'm currently a student, and I'm getting my hours and seeing clients doing that as well.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Now, my question to everyone here: what led each of you to this area of practice within behavior analysis? What experiences most influenced your interest in sexuality and affirming care? And Mackenzie, by all means, if you feel comfortable engaging in this conversation, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, I can start. Need. It wasn't something that I said, I woke up and said, I want to be a sexologist today. Being in the field, like I said, for the last 15 years, I work with a huge range. My youngest participant was 10 months old, ranging
Oh,
to my
wow.
working with adults. And I was coming up to recertification, and I was working with the 40-year-old at the time that was really expressing his most concerns, or his biggest concerns, were that in social sexual elements, and he's never had a girlfriend, and he wanted to get married, and he wanted to have children, and unfortunately his mom was overly infantilizing at 40 years old, was still not allowing him to have those experiences. And so I really wanted to feel more competent and capable of being able to support him. So I started looking for CEUs. It wasn't something that I specifically went for the credentialing program. I started doing CEUs to just to get my feet wet, to feel more competent. And then it evolved into doing the certification. And I haven't told Nicholas this before, but it was very intimidating at the beginning. It kind of felt big and scary, and it felt like, oh, even thinking about sexual behaviors, especially in so many communities, it can be very taboo to talk about those things. So it felt really big. And so, like I shared, I live in Southern California. I work with majority of my clients are Hispanic, monolingual Spanish, very conservative. And so these topics are even more taboo, right? But me working on it was out of necessity, bringing much awareness needed to these populations, into these underserved communities. So I mean, everyone has a different experience, but that was me out of complete necessity. And now I'm loving the field and loving the experiences.
I think it's kind of the same thing as Brittany mentioned. I know for myself is once I started working with clients and it comes, taboo, it's like, oh no, we have a client that's going through puberty and it seemed like we don't know what to do. So that's when I started to look into it, and I said, oh, you're right. We don't know what to do, how to look in. And so that's when I first started finding the area a few years ago. And then most recently, really speaking up about it in kind of that public school and an overall school type of education. So it's very much like, something happens like, oh no, they can't, or this is inappropriate. So really speaking out about what those words mean, what we're seeing, and looking at it as a whole picture. And same thing, I recognize and speak up being as a Black BCBA in also underserved communities where it's very much already taboo to speak about it, to talk about sex and talk about your body parts. So I feel like I'm like, oh, I have no problem talking about this. This is an area I'll go head first into. So seeing that need there as well. And I think right now I currently work a lot more with the younger crowd, and I'm excited to continue on and working with adults directly as well.
I guess I'll hop in. So I found this work in very roundabout ways. I got started in 2003 as a community sex educator through the Gay Lesbian Straight Education Network. I was a peer-to-peer community sex educator. So I was only 16 when I got trained.
Wow.
And I opened up the first gay straight alliances in the states of Alaska and Hawaii.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, it was like that first wave of gay straight alliances back in the early 2000s. So we created safe spaces, we provided sex ed, and we created a spot where there could be equitable access. But what we did not think of at the time was those who were in the special ed program or people with different needs. And it really wasn't until I actually had completed my first master's in psychology and I was trying to find a psychology like practicum site that I looked into ABA because I saw a lot of ABA opportunities. And I was like, oh, let's look into this. And I was like, well, I really like this idea of like, data driven decision making and helping out people who otherwise couldn't get there. So I went, and when I was actually at my first ABA agency, which I don't name, they're not on my resume. But when I was there, all I saw was abuse and neglect. And I saw people being violated in terms of their human rights and their sexuality and gender expression. And I was like, this is not okay. So even though I was really only dabbling into ABA to get some hours, I realized this is where I needed to stay. And so that's where I moved forward. And then getting diagnosed autistic myself just a couple years later, after working in the field and realizing that there were a lot of similarities, I started recognizing even more the importance of this because I had my own really negative experiences growing up. I just didn't know I was autistic, but a whole lot of being way too literal. Things like having somebody tell me that, you go home, you beat your meat is how you engage in solo sex. So I went home and bruised myself. These kinds of things where later I was like, oh, that makes sense why I was more apt to do that. But it really, to me, some of those earlier experiences that I had were me trying so hard to just be liked or be accepted. And sex was a way to connect with people and do that didn't require a lot of other skills. And that's an area that I recognized it actually puts people, especially younger adults, it puts them in a very precarious situation and a dangerous one where they're very likely to be abused or trafficked. And I did not want that to be something that would be somebody else's future.
And I want to say, I love how your team is so diverse. A lot of times when you see most teams, they lack that diversity. And you also yourself identifying someone within the neurodivergent community, that screams diversity in itself, where you have these organizations, no one within the team represents being neurodivergent. There's a lack of people of color on the team, and they come in from the outside saying, we're going to help you with these, these challenges. And it's like, do you, outside of the textbook, how can you relate to me culturally? Like, how can you really support me? And like you said, also being a part of LGBTQ community, so I'm so glad to see your team is so diverse, because we lack that a lot in our field, where we have all these people that have the credentials, have the doctorates, written the literature, but it's like, I still don't see myself within my service. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have all these accolades, but I don't see me in this at all. So with that being said, I love this. I love it. I love it. I love it. And people fail to realize that the Disability Act went into effect in the 1990s. And with that being said, adult services is still fairly new. And there are just some areas we just really lack resources in. So you've just created a niche. So when it comes to sexuality, it is done in the appropriate, it's basically just kind of creates the lane where they receive that appropriate service, as opposed to experts who are behavior analysts lacking this area of expertise. And then on top of that, there's a lack of literature. So everybody's just doing the best they can to support this person. And when you have those contributing factors, it leads to a lot of personal bias when it comes to decision making. So it's awesome that we have a team like yourself who are experts, who go beyond personal bias, but have the education, have the personal experience, and also have the passion to make sure the individuals in the adult community get the support they need. So that's awesome. All right. So my next question is, the topic of sexuality can be especially sensitive when families are concerned about safety or social outcomes. How can clinicians partner with families during assessments when the immediate request is to stop? the behavior. Instead, guide the discussion towards education, skill building, and appropriate supports. So I'll just kind of go in based on my personal experience. Like I said, I work with adults. And a lot of times I have families where the individual is showing an interest in sex, where they might be going on social media, trying to find a partner, and sadly, due to their lack of education, they may end up in vulnerable situations. Like, for example, they may end up giving a person $300 just to meet with them, not realizing that, hey, if you're getting with somebody romantically, you shouldn't have to give them $300 just to have their time. But due to their lack of education, they don't know any better. Or, for example, I've had personal experiences where I had a case where the person, an adult male, he was eloping out the home to meet with prostitutes, and he was just doing the best. So basically, I had individuals going above and beyond to get that social needs met. And as opposed to their family members and loved ones supporting their decision, their first instinct to me as the expert, stop them from being sexual, like turn it off. And it's like, like this is a human being that has sexual needs, like as opposed to turning it off. How can we have that conversation where it's like, no, let's give them the resources, the knowledge, so when they are online and somebody's like, give me $300 to talk to me, they can have that discernment on knowing what is considered appropriate and not appropriate. So my question to you guys is, how do we have those conversations where the family's first instinct is no, like, no, stop, just stop it. And I know one huge concern I keep getting all the time, specifically when it comes to women, is what happens if they get pregnant. And I'm probably ruffling a few feathers. People might be logging off by now. And years from now, somebody's going to listen to this and turn off. I know she didn't, but I took a gift. Goddamn, the world needs to hear this. But I know that's another thing with the females. What happens if she gets pregnant? So to prevent her from getting pregnant, she doesn't even know about sex at all. So I know that was a lot, but I would love to hear you guys' professional opinion when it comes to this topic.
Well, I've been going around saying silence increases harm, right? We don't talk about it. We don't name the elephant in the room. There's going to be issues. So at least I anchor down in skill build, skill build, skill build. That's the biggest thing that we can do. And all those things that you just named, Shonda, it's like, okay, can we talk about online safety? Can we talk about boundaries? Can we talk about sex, consent, right? And so all of those are areas of need. And if I engage in any problematic behavior, it's probably because of lack of skill, right? So I think every family is going to have their own individual take, their own individual way of how they see it. It's truly meeting the family where they're at. But at the end of the day, we can't just erase something or make it go away. That doesn't exist. That doesn't happen, right? So then having an alternative, appropriate replacement is going to be. Then how do I do that in an appropriate and safe way? Skill build.
Yeah, and I think building on that, especially when you're working with families, if they have either a younger one or a teenager or an adult, is talking about a lot of the things in terms of a prevention. So less of the, oh no, this has happened now. So it might be like bringing up some of those topics before they're even like thought of as an issue. So it means if I'm working with a family and maybe the client is younger, they're not thinking or worrying about them being a teenager going out and dating when they're 16, but I'm going to be questioning and thinking, okay, well, do they know about their body, and what can we work on now that's age appropriate and appropriate for that client, so that we don't come into that when, oh no, 16, that we've already developed some of these. And I think with that, like building in that understanding with the families, or if it's like a staff member that's working with someone. So starting those conversations so that we're feeling really comfortable, so that when something not so great, if that were to happen, it's less of kind of like a freak out. And that's the approach I feel like, especially me being like kind of more so in the schools, is like just talking about it, letting them know, hey, we're comfortable talking about it. So that is a good way to get some kind of feedback as well, is that, hey, I'll say the words, this, he has a penis, she has a vagina, what are these? And what is appropriate, was not inappropriate. So getting those conversations started also, I think, helps a lot in just kind of getting away from that fear.
Rock on. Okay, I'm gonna throw out here something that I use as a tactic, and I've shared this in some other disseminations, but I think it's very relevant here. Um, when I have parents who are fighting me in regard to access to sexuality, or fighting me in regard to access to sex education and information, especially on my end, I've run into less of the majority of the clients who have come to me are people who were assigned male at birth. And so what I've run into more has been, this is going to open up a can of worms and we're going to run into just constant solo sex. But the other thing that I run into is queerness, right? They can't possibly really be queer because these are our values, and they would never not adhere to these values. It's got to be the autism that has skewed them in some way. And so I've got these parents who are very resistant to the idea that their gay kid is gay and that their gay behavior is not problem behavior. And so in those types of things, when we're talking about gay kid, I'm also talking about adults, adult children. So I guess you could call them charges is what I've started calling them because you're a guardian to your charge, right? But in this regard, I've got there's a 23-year-old man and his family is saying he can't be gay. He's not allowed to have gay sex. He can't have a boyfriend. We want all of that to be problem behavior. What? So I instantly I have that natural inclination to want to like fight with them. But I also recognize that that would be an abolishing operation for anything moving forward. And I need this conversation, as uncomfortable as it is for me, to be an establishing operation for future work. And so I try to cater to the motivating operations that are present. And I recognize that if they are being resistant to me, that there's a reason. So I try and play into that reason. And so my approach has been to offer them what I call the fifth function. And this is not a researched fifth function. This is not a scientific dissemination. This is more about the art of service delivery and how I've gone.
And I'm glad you emphasized the whole literature thing, because as you know, our field will take what you said and go off running with it.
Oh, I know. I've been in the behavior.
I had to put that in there.
But the idea of the fifth function is that the fifth function is love. That love can make us do some crazy things. And love can make us do things that cannot be explained, such as a mother who normally could not, now able to lift a car off of her child. Like that's been demonstrated in literature. You can go back and find proof that mothers can do some amazing things to protect their kids. And so if we kind of tie that back to this idea that what is happening here, this resistance, this to me feels like you really care about this person. I think that's beautiful. And I know that you're expecting me to fight with you right now, but I just really want to take a moment and tell you how beautiful I think the fact that you're coming at me with all this anger is, because I now have so much hope for us in the future because you care just as much as I do about this person and probably way more. So I'm going to work with you and let's help this person have the best life they can because you care. The problem with the function of love is that its topography sometimes comes across as hate. And so we have to really make sure that the topography meets the function. And so what you're doing right now by telling them, no, they can't have this, by refusing their identity, by refusing them to move forward, they're feeling restricted by you. They're expressing that this is hateful. They're expressing that you don't like them or you're not giving them something. And I know that that's not what you want, right? That's never what they want. So we start talking about that and like, can we find a way, if at the end of the day what you really care about is them having a quality life and their safety and that they will adhere to your value set as much as possible, then we have to have those things be reinforcing for them. So let's work together on that. But some of that is going to require If you want them to bend for you, you will have to bend for them a little. But we're going to bring the fact, I know this individual loves you. You love this individual. Let's bring that love together. And that's going to be part of my job. I have gotten a few different families who were ready to fire me or kick me out the door the moment I walked in to flip the script. And that's been a really, really powerful thing. So I wanted to share that.
So I guess what I'm getting from you, and for full disclosure, we are not providing specific strategies on how to handle situations. This is a conversation. So what I'm getting from you is basically when you have that family that's showing resistance, or let's say you're a BCBA and you're assigned to a case, and the family, their thing is their sexuality is a target behavior we need to reduce, eliminate. You're saying basically come off with that compare. Well, I'm about to say compassion. That's not a word. So you're basically saying come off with the compassion care approach, where you're basically just kind of looking beyond. I like to think of it where you're not looking at the message, you're not looking at the messenger, you're looking at the message. So, like, naturally, as human beings, if somebody comes off too strong, you look at the message. So, if that guardian or family or loved one or even support staff are shutting you down, now at this point, they're not attending meetings, things like that. You look at the message. So, your first instinct as human beings, we want to fight or flight. They need to be heard, but you're saying, as opposed to looking at the message, look at the messenger. And the messenger is showing, I love this person so much that I feel so strongly about this particular topic. And I feel this is how they should be supported, just based on just my thought process and what I think is best for them. And you're saying, just kind of come with that approach with, okay, I see their perspective. Now I need to intertwine how their perspective can be intertwined with the person served perspective. Because I don't like to say client, I like to say individual supported or person supported. So with that being said, kind of intertwining, look, just as much as you love them, they need that love as well. And how can we come together? Am I right? Am I wrong? Did I screw up what you just shared?
I think you're there. I would say to keep it real simple and ABA terms is what they're bringing me. I'm not looking at the topography of it. I'm looking at the underlying function, the motivation, and I'm making sure to relationally frame what I am doing to what they are wanting. If I can help that become a solid framework for them, then we can move forward. If that does not work, then I go a little lower. I recognize they do love them. They do want safety. They do want care. So then we start talking about abuse statistics and those realities. But I try and take a more positive approach first before I throw my kind of low ball.
Okay. So I get you. I get you. It's like you come from a place of seeing the function of their behavior, meeting them where they are, and if they're still resistant, at that point, just keep it real and just give them those statistics of this is what your loved one is going to go through if they don't get this education in the long run.
Yes, you're
All
going to
right.
need the environment to buy in, right? The environment can't, it's more than just getting them to agree. They have to buy in. There has to be that motivation because they are the ones that are going to shape the behavior when we are not there. And at my agency, we're mainly a consultative model with pretty low hours. And so we have to have a lot of buy-in for every system that we're working with. That's something that I think is really crucial, is to make sure that they can see how this is going to help them long term too. And so again, if we tie it into something that they care about, that safety, then we're getting that buy-in. I wish that they would just want, them to have their best lives no matter what. But at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to go that safety route to get that.
And I can't say I understand because I'm not a caregiver in that situation, but my heart because I always lead with my heart instead of my brain, which could be a bad thing sometimes, depending on the context. But when it comes to this specific context, I can understand the caregiver's perspective, because it's like, this is my loved one. I don't want them to possibly go through the struggles of being out there in the real world when it comes to their sexuality, whether they're straight, gay, or whatever, or I don't want their heart to be broken, because that's the reality that comes with relationships. Your heart gets broken. People take advantage of you, so it's like, I understand the loved one's perspective, but at the same time, from an ABA perspective, specifically when it comes to dismantling ableism culture, it's one of those things where we got to have that conversation, because you got to think, as a loved one, if you were to leave tomorrow, because that's the reality with all of us, we're not here on this earth forever. So as a loved one, if you were to leave tomorrow, you want to leave with the peace of mind. My son or my daughter, yes, they are part of the LGBT community, or yes, they're sexually active, but they're safe and they have understanding. And even if they don't, they have the necessary supports around them where they are safe, as opposed to you just safeguarding it and hiding it from them. Because once you leave the picture, at that point, they won't have that advocacy anymore. So that's why you need to build a voice for them as individuals, so they can create the advocacy within themselves, verbal or nonverbal. Because I know a lot of people say, oh, they're nonverbal, verbal or nonverbal. I don't like to go by those labels. I like to say, as a human being. So with that being said, how can clinicians approach topics like consent and decision-making capacity in ways that are both ethical and empowering when it comes to sexuality? And I just bring that up because I know we've probably all heard the conversation, whether the people that are viewing, everybody in this call, where people always say, oh, they don't know. They wouldn't know any better. So it's no point in you having that conversation with them or teaching them that skill. So based on you guys' expertise, how can we approach that conversation when it comes to consent and decision-making capacity that are both ethical and empowering when it comes to sexuality?
I'll go ahead and jump in on this one. So we have a pretty commonly utilized assessment called the TALK SCR. And
I'm
we,
sorry to interrupt. Do you think you can back up from the mic a little bit, because we hear some static?
yes, sorry. Are you able to hear that better? So it's called the TALK SCR, is a capacity to consent assessment that is made specifically to be utilized with individuals who have intellectual disabilities or impactful autism. The test itself, it is not our scope. It is not our role to determine if somebody has capacity to consent. However, we can determine if they have the skills according to that assessment, and we can give that assessment to a decision maker. We can also look at a whole lot of behavioral things outside of standardized assessment. And I also feel like this answer is less broad than the others, and I want to give the other folks that I brought on with me a chance to kind of speak up about this. I don't want to just like train ride over all of this, so I'm going to back up and mute myself.
I thought you were doing great with that. I think you're good at explaining the assessments. I think to answer that in terms of, it was your question towards about with the other type of health professionals or with caregivers and the consent?
So that is both spectrums, because I know working with adults, you either have individuals that are supported by their loved ones, where they physically live with their loved ones, and their loved ones, when the topic of sexuality comes up, they're like, oh, they wouldn't understand what sex is. And then you have the context, which can be a residential setting, where they're being supported by residential staff 24/7. And let's say you're doing an intake, right? And you're seeing some behaviors regarding sexuality. Maybe they're masturbating excessively, or maybe you notice when it comes to their sexuality, they are showing signs that they might be gay or whatnot. And when you do bring it up to the support staff, they're like, oh, they wouldn't understand. We don't need to talk about that with them. They don't understand. And then the legal guardian spectrum, right? Because when it comes to adult services, you have individuals that may be their own guardian, family members are guardian, or they have state
Right.
appointed guardians. And in the state appointed guardian context, it can be that way. Like I've actually had that personal experience where a state appointed guardian said they don't need to have that conversation regards to sexual. That it's not something we need to talk about.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
that
I
able
think,
to answer your question?
yeah, yeah. And so like how Nicholas mentioned, there's the assessments to really get an understanding for like that person that we're talking with, if that's an adult, and kind of where their understanding lies. And then I think kind of circling back with that same buy-in. So if we're working maybe with someone that is a staff member, so they may not be a parent of an adult, but they are like a legal guardian or staff member, so they're closely related, that buy-in in terms of talking with them and checking in about, okay, where do these behavioral problems lie? Is this an actual behavioral problem, or is this a misunderstanding for all that is around them? So if it's a person that's coming and saying, oh, they don't need to know that, then our focus might be a little bit more towards that person, their understanding for the person that they're working with. And that might be a little bit of a focus. And then the shift of the focus might be, exactly figuring out where their consent lies. So I feel that it's kind of like a two-part in who you're mainly focusing with and where that problem lies. And then kind of diving in there. And then the assessment part, like Nicholas mentioned, in terms of figuring out, okay, what exactly does this learner, do they know, do they not know, and where can I come in to help increase those areas that we want to make the awareness or overall improve their life in that specific area.
Yeah, and I would just add that I think it is a big part of our role to remind everyone around the participants that we serve that needing supports does not equate to lack of capacity, right? And just because we need supports doesn't mean that we shouldn't have the ability to have access. And when we're creating goals, I think just to have certain things in mind, right? Like the goal am I creating, especially like in residential type settings, which I support, is this goal for a lack of or discomfort from the staff, or is this a safety concern for the participant, right? Where are these goals coming from? If I'm going to talk about something like masturbation, and are we looking to eliminate the behavior, which doesn't exist, doesn't even, it makes no sense. Or am I going to teach safety? Am I going to teach appropriate parameters? Am I going to teach about privacy? Am I going to teach about about social norms? And so again, coming back to, if you want me to limit the behavior, is this out of safety for the participant, or is this a staff discomfort? And a lot of times it's out of discomfort. The reality is, not being equipped, not having the training, not having the sufficient resources in place to be able to work with these behaviors. And so really understanding that, I think that we have to be able to advocate for our clients and say, having supports and having interdependence does not mean that they cannot have access to these things. And realistically, being an adult is okay to be interdependent, right? We rely on each other, and it's okay to have supports in place. And that's always going to be, like I said, on versus no access at all.
Just real quick to bounce off that. I mean, yeah, relationships oftentimes there's going to be interdependence, and one partner steps in where the other one doesn't have the strength or the skill. I mean, just thinking of my husband is like tall. The other day I was like, hey, I can't get that dusted, but you can. Right. Just those things. It's very common in a relationship for one partner to kind of pick up the slack where the other one doesn't have the skill. And I think that, that idea that interdependence is a less than is really interesting, because it's like, it's actually interwoven throughout our society.
And I'm so glad you brought that up. That's a concept I really want us to look at, because I know when it comes to ableism, I'm going to be honest, I'm noticing I get pushback because a lot of people say to me, well, Shonda, you can't just allow this individual to navigate life on their own when it comes to ableism. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying we focus on dismantling ableism, but focusing on interdependence. And like you said, Nick, and what you ladies share, technically, we all engage in interdependence every day. When you go to Walmart, there's interdependence because in order for you to get what you need in the store, you have somebody stocking the shelves, you have somebody at the register. You go to the gas station, same thing. You can't just get your gas. There's somebody that comes in. So technically, as a society, there is already that interdependence. It's just in regards to specifically sexuality, as opposed to making it codependent, right? And codependent is as the caregiver or support system, we make all the decisions for you. We focus on interdependence, where we're going to support this decision and we're going to get the necessary tools for you and support you throughout the process, not just leaving you high and dry. Because I don't want anybody to listen to this conversation and be like, you want my loved one to just go on Facebook and find big booty holes? Like, no, 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 no. I'm not saying that. I want to say, if they do go on Facebook or the internet or whatever, TikTok, whatever the mainstream source is, they have the knowledge and the wisdom and guidance to know what to do. And if they are unsure, there should be that safety where they can come to you without judgment and say, look, I just went through this. I just saw this. How can I navigate it? As opposed to, as a caregiver, just shutting it off altogether. So with that being said, I have another question. In practice, we sometimes see assumptions about who individuals should form relationships with. How can we support people in developing relationships based on connection and choice while still maintaining ethical boundaries and safeguards? So I'm going to be totally honest. And I don't know if the internet or whatever is going to shut me down after this. It really grinds my gears when people push individuals that require support needs to only date within that same demographic. So, for example, you might have someone who has an interest to have a boyfriend or girlfriend. Oh, yeah, we have a dance every Friday. It's other individuals with disabilities. You need to go to that dance. Or, it's like people just lump you in this category where you should only date other individuals that look like you, not realizing that as outside, and I like to say support needs. I don't like to say low functioning or high functioning because it sounds like we're talking about a machine. We're talking about human beings that just so happen require some additional supports, and that's why us as experts are involved on the case. So with that being said, I feel like, yes, I'm saying feel because maybe this is my personal bias speaking, but I feel like we shouldn't just lump an individual to just date that specific demographic. So if they are actively talking to someone who requires no support needs, let's say this person has a job, whatever, they out in society, and just so happen they find this person attractive, and just so happen they receive adult services and they're in a residential home, as opposed to shutting it out. Well, oh no, you can't date her, you can't date him, or you're dating the same sex. Oh no, no, no. It should be more so. This is my opinion. We support that, but give that person the tools. We as a team assist that person in navigation because sadly we do live in a world where people do prey on vulnerable populations, where they say, okay, you look like you don't know, so I'm going to use this to take advantage of you. So I guess my question is, in practice, we sometimes see assumptions about who individuals should form relationships with. How can we support people in developing relationships based on connection and choice while still maintaining ethical boundaries and safeguards? And if I'm out of pocket with what I said, you guys are the experts, so you please let me know. But I feel like by encouraging someone to date someone like themselves, that is ableism. That's like saying, oh, well, you're black, so you should only date a black person, or you're Asian, you should only date an Asian person. Like for me, I see love sees no color or no sex. So I'm done. I'm off my soapbox.
I think I'll start with this one. I think in a general, like a one sentence answer is put your biases aside. Like it's simple to say. I think it's harder for some to follow. In put your biases aside, like a lot of what we're doing when we're helping other individuals, we have to remember that we're helping them to live their best life that may look completely different than what might look for our life. So I'm putting aside any of my own beliefs, my own thoughts, and I'm approaching it in a blank state. And I think checking in with that person, say, is, what are some of the qualities that you're looking for in another person to date? So they may decide and say, I'd like for someone who has the same diagnoses of me. And then they might need to also just be informed that you don't have to be with someone that is just like you, right? So if you like everything super organized and you like everything on the lower shelf, you might get to actually date someone that puts things on a higher shelf, and then you have each other and they can reach for it the same way. So I think putting aside your own biases in that when you're approaching it, and sometimes it's just also letting them know of, okay, let's focus on what you do want, what you don't want. And it's also, maybe you might also be coming into meeting with a person that was told that. So now you're maybe having to rewire. So they were told, oh, I can only, say if they're male, I can only date girls. That's what we're supposed to do. I'm a boy, I'm supposed to date girls. So you might be meeting with some individuals where you're having to reteach them some of these things that society might have, or another person. And so just approaching that with that care, and checking in, where is this coming from? Is this something you want, or were you just told this? And going from there.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. Is it coming through with static, or is it clear? We're clear? Okay, cool. So I kind of have a two-prong answer here. My first thought is something that we very commonly do at Empowered, and that is that we actually try and get clients out into what they would consider community. So, if they're part of the queer community, we're checking in with them. Do they want to go out to gay bars? Do they want to go to queer non-alcoholic spaces like a pride center? If this is somebody who is very specifically, like, I had a young man with Down syndrome who he told me, he's just like, we went to a dating event for people with disabilities, and he was like, the only girls here all have Down syndrome. And he was right, they did. And I was like, that's okay, like, it's okay that they do. And he was like, but I don't want to date someone with Down syndrome. And it was a trip to me that immediately somebody who overheard it started to try and talk him into wanting to date somebody with Down syndrome. Whereas I was like, let's get you out. Because at the end of the day, consent is consent. If you can consent, if you have that capacity, if we know you have that capacity, then why can't you consent to all the things people can consent to? So that's one prong there. My kind of other thought in all of this is actually, no, I think I kind of roundabout just hit them both. That was all of it.
Oh, Brittany, I didn't know if you wanted to say something. I noticed everybody else talked.
No, I think that they said it all, but I can just say that consent is still a skill, and we can make sure that we're supporting that and that we're teaching that. And if there's things that they don't understand as far as like social norms or boundaries, things that go even further than that, then we can absolutely support and skill build that. And, kind of going back to what we were saying earlier, having supports does not equate to a lack of capacity. And I think that idea is pretty big. And I feel like most people don't understand that or accept that. And I think if somebody needs supports and they can't consent at all, and I think that's true, right? I think that there's going to be levels of understanding and levels of abilities, but being able to give the most independence within their own capacity, I think, is what's going to be key.
All right. So I do have one more question before I wrap it up. What role does supervision play in ensuring that sexuality related services are delivered ethically, safely, and in ways that respect individual values, cultures, and lived experience?
Yeah, I think, like I was saying earlier, that need that comes out of that need. You need to have supervision, you need to have support, you need to be able to continue your education. And seeing everything through one lens is never going to be the way it's going to be done, right? So, as I support different demographics, different populations even. I have to make sure that I'm getting supervised by somebody that does have those qualifications. And if they don't, then looking elsewhere, looking for supervision in other places, always taking continuing education units. So you're not an old dinosaur and you don't stay stagnant, right? Things are always evolving and they're changing, and making sure that you're staying on top of your game to be able to provide better services is ultimately what I think is the most important when we're giving services.
Yeah,
And
and I
now,
think to oh, sorry.
no,
Just
no, go
to
ahead.
build
Go ahead.
on yeah, no, to build on what Brittany was saying is, some people, if you're newer in the field and things, don't be, if you feel like, oh no, I don't have this experience, like it's okay. It's everyone's still learning. There's still some BCBAs that are still, brand new, have not heard this the same way. So it's that learning opportunity that it's going to be a continuous thing. And I think seeing it in terms of a whole picture. So it's not just I'm only working with 3-year-olds. So I don't have to worry about this, but it's going to be a learning that you're doing and you're working with that family. So it might be where you are going through that learning process yourself as that clinician in certain terms when you're talking with those family members. It might be something that's new. And I think reaching out to those people that do have that experience. So if they have the knowledge, they have the experience and know what to do that way, because you don't want to be passing on misinformation. So it's kind of an area, if you don't know it, that is okay. You want to reach out to people that do. It's we don't know everything. I'm not skilled in everything as a BCBA, but everyone's going to have their strengths. And I think showing that you're open and wanting to find out about this and caring is going to help with that person that you're working with, whether that's the individual themselves, the caregiver, a family member, or if it's an educator. So reaching out to get those answers rather than feeling like, oh, I just got to answer this and this is all I know. So, here you go. Good luck.
I guess both of them just answered this very, very well. I don't have too much to add, but something that it kind of came up in there, and I just really want to emphasize it, is that your supervisor for anything that you're doing, A, you should be seeking it out if it's something new. But B, that supervisor should not just be someone who is eager to supervise. It should be someone who has really done this before. When I was doing my initial ABA practicum, I was under 2 behavior analysts who I love them dearly. I passed my exam. They did right by me. And also, neither of them had a sex ed background. And so there was a lot of me being like, is this okay? And them being like, I hope so, think so. And that was really not an ideal road to walk down. So it is, I think, very important that your supervisor really, really know. The same thing happens to me when I went back through for my sex counselor certification. My supervisor was a sex therapist because there were no behavior analysts supervising at ASECT. And same thing, she would ask me sometimes, like, oh, why are you doing this? And I'd be like, well, we have to because it's ABA. Or she'd be like, why don't you try this approach? Let's break down this dream. And I'm like, we can't do that because this is ABA. So I do think it's very important that you find a supervisor who is both in your scope in terms of like the actual science and methodology that you're going to be using, and that has that practice history or that history with that population. I think, those are very, very important aspects to look at.
So my question to you guys is, let's say you have a supervisor who isn't humble enough to do the research, right? So let's say you're a BCBA, you got the sexuality case, and you go to your supervisor and they give you, I think we should do that. Maybe we should try it out and let me know what happens. Because, you have some people who are humble enough that are like, you know what, this is beyond my scope of practice. I'm going to do my research, or I'm going to link you to an expert who does know. But then you have some BCBAs. I don't know if you should say humble, but I like to say, if you know better, you do better. Some people just don't know any better. So they'll just kind of ride that wave with you, not realizing that's where personal bias can creep in, because there's nobody that is actually an expert. So if you are under supervision with someone who truly doesn't know, and they're not humble enough to tell you, I don't know, but they're showing you signs they don't know. How can you, as the person working under that person, how should you navigate getting the necessary support and guidance when it comes to supporting that case?
You reach out for supervision, right? If I know my supervisor is not competent and is not equipped, I don't get to just say, well, I'll just, be dragged under your feet. No, and I love my supervisors, and I've had amazing supervisors. Um, many supervisors, different credentialing, different capacities, different experiences. But exactly what happened with the sexual behaviors, they just weren't competent. And even though they were giving me the best direction they could, I knew that it wasn't enough. So then I said, okay, then I'm going to reach out support elsewhere. And so you have to take it upon yourself and saying, this is not enough. And we can't just accept mediocre. And we have to be able to look onto other professionals that are competent and be humble enough to realize this is out of my scope. But it doesn't mean that it's because it's out of your scope at the moment, it'll never be within your scope, right? That's why there's supervision. That's why there's coursework. That's why there's different practicums that you can be in and be able to grow that scope. But being realistic enough to say, I'm not getting the support I need. I don't know what to do. And it's not to hurt your supervisor's feelings, but it's to do right by your clients and to look elsewhere.
Yeah,
So
no,
for
that's
those
I
of
think
you
those are.
who are, are you speaking?
Oh, sorry, just adding on. I just feel like I'm adding on to amazing things Brittany says. Is if you're looking into this and let's say you are just seeking it just for your own knowledge. I always usually recommend lots of like the continuing education credits, watching a lot of the great material that's out there because you might have a simple answer. Say you have a simple, question, you're newer in the field, you might get that answer in one of the great talks that's been recorded and that's done. So some of the ones like that Empowered has talked about a lot of the more so the basic topics. And that way, and if you're running into a question that's a little bit more complex, then you're definitely going to need someone to reach out to. But if you're looking for the underlying kind of knowledge, watching a lot of the information that's already out there, and then when you're speaking out to your supervisor about something specific. And so if you're working with a client that it's you're trying to address something specific to, then you should absolutely have someone that has that expertise and that knowledge. And that might not be that direct supervisor, but definitely speaking up and saying at the same time, not trying to shame your supervisor, saying, you don't know about this, why not? Because, like I didn't know about this 5 years ago. And I look back and I'm like, how didn't I know about this and stuff? So I think if you're like a supervisee looking at a lot of the material that's already out there, and you know what, reaching out to people, like networking is so great. So many of us, we do this because we care. Anyone who reaches out to, I can speak for myself and I feel like I can speak for Brittany Nicholas. If someone reaches out, they love to talk about it. They're not going to be like, nope, sorry. So the field is like growing in that sense and networking and talking. And so getting that, even if it's a simple question, and then if it's something more complex, you're setting up a consultation so that the clinician can then look into everything also.
Wow. Again, the two of them put together such a well-rounded thing. I feel like I'm just going to put a cherry on top. My thought here really is to kind of succinctly bring them together. So, what I heard Brittany say was reach out and find that supervisor who is the unicorn you are looking for. And what I heard Shalini say is, look for those resources, the CEUs and the research, and try and bring that back. And something that I think can really tie those two together, reach out to the people who are actually delivering the CEUs or writing the articles, because some of them provide supervision or consultation, and then you are getting it straight from the expert.
I love it and I'm here for it. Before we come to a close, I do have my ABA clinical mentee, Mackenzie. And prior to this interview, I did encourage her to do her own research so she can gain an understanding of the conversation and just further insight. So when she becomes a professional in the field, she knows how to navigate a case like this. So someone who is actually in the room and doesn't really have the expertise like everyone else, but you're just in those early learning stages for you to get to that point. Do you have anything that you feel like you can contribute to this conversation?
First, I want to say I loved listening to all of your stories. I could like cry right now. I don't know, I'm a senior in college. I'm like, sorry. I'm just trying to figure things out, and hearing like how passionate you all are and like how successful you all are at your jobs has been really inspiring, and I loved listening to this conversation. I wrote so many things down that all of you said. I'm so sorry. This is not expecting this to happen.
I love this. No, I love this because I feel like, most of they work with adults, so this is so nice to get to see, and yay.
So the research I did was great and aligned with everything you guys have done. Like, especially I think Shalini, you were talking about like every aspect of your field matters, whether you're working with adults, working with kids. Like my previous job experience that I've had is like mostly with kids, but I just appreciate everything you guys have shared. Your work you do is amazing, and I just thank you for having me on. And Shanda knows, but I appreciate her greatly, and I really enjoy. Sorry, I don't remember what the question was. I'm sorry. That was. Oh.
Oh no, you did great. You did great. I mean, you know, we're human beings. So I appreciate you feeling comfortable letting your guard down to be this vulnerable because you didn't have to. So I'm here for it. So with us coming to a close, does everybody have anything they want to end with? Anything you want our listeners to look into following future projects? Anything going on in Hawaii? Like, what do you guys have to share as we come to a close?
Well, I can share. So I just did a course, I want to say back in September or October with Nicholas. Like I said, it was talking about cultural insights into Hispanic cultures. And soon I'll be producing hopefully kind of like a follow-up of how to start talking about sexual behavior with Hispanic cultures. So be on the lookout. That'll be through Empowered, through Nicholas. It'll be CEUs for BCBAs, and I'm not sure if it'll count towards CBS credits, but possibly Nicholas. So I'm excited for that to come.
And I don't have anything specific, but I do love this conversation. I love this, especially myself being so far out in Hawaii, holding it down out here. But I do love having these conversations, and especially even having like Mackenzie, like, you are so early in your career. I too feel like I'm still a senior in college. It's crazy, but I'm not. But I think it's exciting to see like how this is growing and stuff, and just like the collaboration. I think that, yeah, the stuff that is put together through Nicholas with Empowered is amazing. There's so much content. He has things that are free resources, like the knowledge is there. So I think spreading that word to know and to see that is really good.
I will follow up and say, I think that if you want to work with adults, you should be very, very proud of yourself for wanting to do something that is so needed, and just get in there and start working with adults. Get yourself some supervision, somebody who can help you access that, maybe some mentorship if you want to open up your own consulting firm or something. In regard to building up your competencies, Shalini already did such a wonderful job talking at my program. Thank you. So we do have that available, and people can be certified to work not only in the disability sector, but we also offer a second level of certification to work in the neurotypical sector for adults as well. But then I just wanted to end with a really, really, I think, powerful quote from B.F. Skinner. And that is, the ideal of behaviorism is to eliminate coercion. Love that.
Thank you. And as we come to a close, thank you, viewers. If you want any information about Empower or how to follow everyone in future projects, their information is in the description. And I always like to end with, the seed has been planted. So how will you apply it? from your one and only Shonda J, your BCBA. All right, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was nice meeting all of you. Sorry about that at the end, but good luck with
Oh,
everything.
no, don't be.
You're amazing, Mackenzie.
Oh, thank you.